everybody. Today is what, the 7th? Is that right? Do I have that right? Let me just check my calendar. 6. Trying to rush things along. Today is May the 6th. It is now 5:02 a.m. And the Board of Education is convened pursuant to state law to conduct a community forum on our code of conduct. And that code of conduct is contained within the Board of Education's policy manual, where it's among our many policies. And so it's appropriate that our chairperson of our policy committee, Chairperson Willa Powell, conduct or convene this particular hearing on the code of conduct. Chairperson Powell, the gavel is yours.
Thank you, President White. In truth, it's our board staff that keep things moving smoothly, but I would like to take a moment to introduce our subject matter. The Rochester City School District strives to provide a safe and productive learning environment that will help students become successful. Our goal is to ensure that all students have the opportunity to participate fully in their education without disruption. The district's code of conduct is written to promote the positive learning environment for all students. It spells out the expectations for the responsible behavior of all partners in the school community: students, teachers, administrators, other staff, parents, guardians, and visitors to our schools. The Board of Education most recently adopted a code of conduct on June 16th, 2016, and has revised this policy for consideration based on the New York State School Board Association updates and our School Climate Advisory Committee, the SCAC, recommendations during the 2021 school year. And I would say that this editing and updating process has actually been underway for several years, going through an iterative process of responding to feedback that we're getting from advisory bodies. The school board is hosting this virtual community forum or public hearing to receive the community's input on proposed changes to the code. A hearing is required by state law, not on all policies, but on code of conduct in particular. Kalia is going to receive the speakers into our session, and the comments that we receive will be considered during our June 1st Policy Committee Meeting of the Whole. And after the Code of Conduct passes through the Policy Committee and is approved to advance to the full board, that policy will go through our regular policy amendment process, Policy 2410, which provides the community with multiple additional opportunities to speak to the contents of the Code of Conduct at our regular scheduled business meetings as it comes up under the first, second, and third readings of that policy. So having explained all that, I would like to turn the control of the meeting over to Kalia Wade, who will introduce each of our speakers.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. So we have 3 speakers tonight speaking on the Code of Conduct. And I'm going to welcome our first speaker who is Barb Van Kerkhove, who is a community member, and she will be addressing the board now, just letting her into the room. Hi, Barb, welcome.
Hi, Kalia, thank you.
You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Oh my gosh, you mean I'm already? Wow.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm going up to the top of my document. Good evening, everyone. My name is Barb Van Kerkhove. I'm a parent of an RCSD grad and a member of the Community Task Force on School Climate. I want to thank the commissioners tonight for hosting this forum and to get input on the proposed update to the district's 2016 Code of Conduct. As a member of the Community Task Force, I was very involved in the drafting and passage of this current code, which I consider one pillar to transforming school climate and reducing suspensions and suspension disparities. The progressive discipline approach outlined in this code, paired with restorative practices as community building and a first response, and suspensions as a last resort, is working. Suspensions are down in the district. Still, we need to do more to stop the disparities in suspensions and other exclusionary practices. In fact, I was just on another call, and it said that while the United States has 5% of the world's population, we have 20% of the world's incarcerated people. So we need to stop that pipeline. So I was glad to see the district work in collaboration with members of the School Climate Advisory Committee to incorporate most of the recommendations from the committee's September 2018 recommendations, and to explain why certain recommendations were not included. As a result of incorporating the bulk of the committee's recommendations, this update further shifts responses from punitive and exclusionary ones to more restorative practices and teachable opportunities. Therefore, I fully support this proposed update to the code. And I urge the board and the superintendent to use this new and improved code as one pillar to, just gotta shift my page here, as one pillar to continue the transformation of our district into a restorative district. And here are a few ways to do it. Rather than relying just on the behaviors and responses matrix in the code, staff need to understand the entire code of conduct, especially its principles and the rights, responsibilities, and expectations. So provide regular training to staff on the whole code of conduct. Focus on community and relationship building and restorative practices to harm. Continue to use suspensions only as a last resort. So further train staff, especially school security officers, in restorative responses to conflict, and provide training on how to restoratively re-include students into the school community after suspension. Third, provide regular and ongoing training to move staff to understanding and accountability on their own overt and implicit biases. Restorative practices done without an awareness of one's own biases can actually create distrust and disconnection rather than build community and restore relationships. This new and improved code, along with a culturally relevant curriculum, listening to student and family voice, integrating anti-racism, hiring BIPOC teachers, and providing healthy and tasty food, will create a healthy school climate where teaching and learning happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments tonight. And as Commissioner Powell said, we'll also be reviewing the comments in the policy committee meeting on June 1st. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good night. Our next speaker is Kit Miller, who should be joining us in the room. Yep, there she is. Welcome, Kit. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. And I thought I only had 2 minutes, so I feel like I've just got lots of time now. I want to start by thanking all of you for your work on behalf of the children and the school, and it's good to see some of you again after a long time. I'm glad you made it through the last 14 months. I want to just identify myself for those who don't know me. My name is Kit Miller. I serve as director of the Ghani Institute for Nonviolence. I've been an advocate, an educator, and a practitioner of restorative practices, not just since I began my work at the Institute in 2009, but for the 5 years previous to that, when I also worked in Oakland, California, which was my introduction to this powerful form of nonviolence. I think of restorative practices as a structural application for people power and how we give each other justice in spaces. The Ghani Institute has been involved for years in RCSD, engaging in this work. And there's one thing I especially want to point your noses to, because I know so much information comes in front of you, and that's the fact that we did a multimodal study of the impact of restorative practices with students at Monroe Middle School in 2015, 2016. We did that work with Dr. Dina Swanson from the U of R Warner School. Some of you may remember Dina, who unfortunately moved away a couple of years ago, and also some scholars from the Center for Public Safety at RIT. The things that I want to point you to in that qualitative and quantitative analysis that was done, one, we weren't surprised by some of the data that we found. We weren't surprised that restorative practices increased student engagement, increased their capacity to navigate adverse school-based events. But we were really delighted to discover that it also increased students' capacity to navigate adverse life events. It increased their capacity to deal with a death of a friend or a family member, incarceration of a family member, moving, just the kind of everyday stresses that children, especially those living under poverty, are dealing with. We also created a film with those students, and that's on our website. If any of you want to take a look at it, I'd be delighted to send the link. It's only 6 minutes long. And one of the young men reflected the following. He said, the world we live in is all about fighting. This way can help us not to end up as one of those people killed on the streets. So I just want to ask you to really listen to this young man's words. He was someone who was steeped in restorative practices and was finding the benefits of it. And this young man now is a senior. And I want us to populate the streets with more and more young people that have this lived experience. So I'm asking you to support and expand the use of restorative practices in our schools to create a workforce that's more diverse, that looks more like the students that we serve. Whatever you can do to make sure that the kids know that they matter. I know it's hard to find time for this work, but this is the work that's needed for us to be able to create the kind of community that we need. And I want to end again by thanking each and every one of you for your important work that you're doing. And if there's anything that any of us at the Ghani Institute can do, please say. One of my young colleagues who's a Wilson graduate and Niagara University graduate is now using restorative practices with children every day at School 19, Charles T. Lunsford Academy, our neighbor in the Plymouth Exchange neighborhood. And she asked me to extend a warm invitation to each of you to come and see what they're doing. Because really that's the firsthand experience that will tell the tale much better than I can. Thanks again.
Thank you, Kit. We appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you for submitting those. And again, they'll be reviewed at the policy committee in June.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night. Our next speaker is Eamon Scanlon who is another community member who will be addressing the board regarding the code of conduct, and he is entering the room now. Welcome.
Thank you, Kalia. Good to see you.
Good to see you. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready, okay?
Great. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Dr. Leslie Myers-Small, for having me here today, for having this forum about the Code of Conduct. I am Eamon Scanlon, the Education Policy Director at the Children's Agenda, and we've been involved in work around school climate for the past few years, and I also worked on this in my previous role at Citizen Action of New York in passing the new code in June of 2016. This has been probably one of your greatest policy successes of, maybe 10, if not more years in terms of improving academics, decreasing push out. The numbers are pretty stark. There's been a 40% decrease in suspensions through the best data we have over the last 5 years before the pandemic craziness. And that's been associated with less course failures and certainly correlates with your increases in graduation rates. So we at the Children's Agenda fully support these revisions to strengthen the document, to incorporate the fact that SROs are no longer in the school. For those who don't know, police are no longer patrolling the halls of the schools, and to continue to partner and to find ways that we can improve the policy going forward. I know it was mentioned this is sort of a first opportunity, and I think more people would be here to engage, but this date was moved at the last minute, and so that made it very tough. I don't know if I would have gotten here, to be honest, and I've done a lot of work on this. So, move ahead, keep doing this work, and I want to. Normally, I throw a lot of statistics, but I didn't have as much time to prepare, so I just want to relate a story. I met a young woman who was in 6th grade who was going to school 50 at the time. It was about 5 years ago, before the code was passed. And she was always wandering the halls at her school. And that was why she was being suspended repeatedly, talking to her mother. She was always leaving the classroom. And the reason was because she was being bullied. She had some issues with some other girls in her class, and they would bully her, tease her, and so she didn't feel wanted, and she would just leave. She didn't like being in the classroom, and she would get suspended. But there was no resolution. There was no way to actually fix the conflict between her and these other girls, and so she just kept doing it, and she just kept getting suspended and falling behind in school. And then she started having suicide ideation and really struggling. And she couldn't see the school counselor, or the school social worker, because they were only allowed to see kids who had IEPs, students with disabilities, because her caseload was so high. We actually had to meet with the principal and make sure there was an exception so she could see her. It was like a big deal. And that just speaks to the web of problems, from policies that don't really support the kids and don't solve the underlying problems, and then not having the social emotional supports for those students when they do need help. So now, this is an opportunity to double down on these policies. They're really great. And now that you have all this revenue coming in through the increase in foundation aid, the 2 big stimulus packages that were recently passed, this is a chance to double down on restorative practices, social emotional support, social workers, and really continue to thrive in the ways that you've invested over the last few years. Now is the time. Now is the time to make big changes. Again, we fully support these changes to the code. Keep up the good work, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, Eamon. We appreciate your comments tonight. And again, please join us for the policy committee meeting in June, where the additional comments will be reviewed. Powell, that is the end of our speaker section.
Thank you. I want to thank each and every one of my colleagues. We had a perfect attendance among the Board of Education, Superintendent, and Dr. Jallo throughout this public hearing. That's not always the case. And I see Commissioner Adams's hand is up. Do you have a question, Commissioner Adams, or a comment or an observation?
Yes, I have a comment. I think I've heard people say they're using personal privilege or something. That's basically what I needed to make 2 statements. One is an educational statement to the community to let them know, to let their families know that they passed a law now that anybody can vote now. If you're not in jail or convicted of a felony or not, because we need our people to engage in that process. That's one. My second announcement to the community is I'd like to take this moment to sincerely wish all the mothers a happy Mother's Day, because I won't see y'all before then. I wish I could give you a hug, but since I can't, just take my words. Happy Mother's Day. And with that, I'm clear.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. I want to thank each of our speakers for their support of the Code of Conduct. I would also share with the public that we received something of a form letter. I got a dozen or 20 or so copies of the same letter, but the subject line is please support the changes to the RCSD Code of Conduct. So that's telling. And there are a series of bullet points. First and foremost, asks us to approve these changes. Second, to become a restorative district. Third, use suspensions only as a last resort. Fourth, focus on relationships and community building. Fifth, training and accountability to end overt and implicit biases. And finally, mandatory training on the Code of Conduct for all staff, especially the guiding principles and rights and responsibilities. So I just thought I'd read that section of the email into the record. so far, we've heard nothing but good things about this work. And not only will we strive to put the best policy we can forward now, but it's not the end of the story. We will be always on alert for ways to improve this policy. Commissioner, President White, your hand is up.
Yes, I did want to say, Chairperson Powell, that, and I know you and others have alluded to it, but, and some of the speakers have, but we owe a eternal debt of thanks to the task force that got us along this route many years ago. I was very fortunate as president to be around when they did all the good work that resulted in basically revamping the code of conduct. And as one of our speakers has said, that is a consequence of that work. Again, this is long before anybody else, the state had anything to say about it. Distinguished educator, the monitor, this district, thanks to its citizens, was pursuing a path of restorative practices. And as one of our speakers indicated, there is data along with our data respecting the graduation rate that shows that this district was on the right path. I mean, 40% decrease in these kinds of suspensions shows what a community, not the state, but shows what a community together with its elected officials, the Board of Education, which ultimately had to approve, of course, the new code of conduct. And what a lot of people don't know is when those suspensions are drawn into question, even before the new code of conduct, it was the Board of Education that decides whether principals and administrators and the superintendent have violated the code of conduct. And my colleagues know, most of you were around for that time, we have spent hours into the evening, thanks to Kaya, who at the time had a different job, examining in a very excruciating detail the justifications that were given by superintendents to suspend people. And regularly, I see Commissioner Chairperson Powell smiling. I can't see anybody else, but I know my colleagues who were around at the time know that when push come to shove, when the rubber hit the road, it was the Board of Education that is responsible for making sure that the new code of conduct was complied with. And I don't think people really know of that work. They think, and we're thankful that that we just passed the new code of conduct. But what they don't understand is superintendents make decisions on suspensions. And if a parent says, no, I don't like that, state law says the Board of Education is judge and jury and appellate, basically. Not, I mean, there's a role for the State Board of Education, the State Commissioner's Office, but basically we decide whether the rules as applied were violated or not. And again, my colleagues know, I mean, people look at the numbers, the 40% reduction, but people don't really know how many hours these people that you're looking at on the screen have spent culling over records that our staff, including Kalia and the legal department, put together to determine whether the code of conduct was being fairly and equitably enforced. And then we not only did we determine whether it was fairly and equitably enforced, but whether the punishment was just and fair. And my colleagues can't tell you all how many times we changed the sanction. We ensured that students were able to return to school sooner than later. So I want folks to know that this was a comprehensive effort from the community that got it started. I think Commissioner Adams, my son, Rosemary, Chuck, people I can't even remember, I can't remember the names. And actually, what I'd like to be able to do is at one point, at least for a second or third time, thank them publicly for the work, because it really was remarkable work. And as one of the speakers said, if you're looking for results, that is one area where we have seen measurable gains or improvements that would never have happened without the community, and I might add the Board of Education. Thank you, Commissioner Powell, for allowing me that time to remind people of those important facts.
Certainly. And usually the board does not weigh in a public hearing, but having started a pattern here, I'd like to offer the opportunity for other board members to take a moment of personal privilege if they want to speak to this. Commissioner LeBron, hand went up.
Yep, I'm going to do a Facebook later and just put it out there to the public that I do support the changes. so I don't need to be inundated with the emails. I support all of the changes, and I have no hesitation with the recommendations and making sure that they get voted on and approved and move forward in the district. Just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Anyone else? Superintendent, you are unmuted. Would you like to say a word or no?
I think there's certainly a huge history, and there's been a significant amount of time that has brought us to this point. I think just all I'll say at this point is that given just our past history in the district, I am a restorative superintendent. I believe in restorative practices, and that I believe in training, because I too have received multiple emails, probably the same ones that you all have received. So I do believe in making sure that individuals are trained on the code of conduct. I think the key thing that we all have to be mindful is no matter how good or excellently written and how collaborative individuals are, it's really on the application of the code of conduct. And so that's where we really have to, I feel like, move forward as a team to figure out how we make sure that those important stakeholders are trained, and that our scholars in particular are trained on it. So the first time that they come in contact with it is not when they have broken a quote unquote rule, right? That they understand it. So that's work that we need to move forward, and that's work that I've done before. So I look forward to moving that forward.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. A last call for personal privilege. Commissioner Elliott?
Yeah, Commissioner Powell, I really didn't have a lot to say. It is, because it really has already been said, but it is great work that has been done. It has been a long time in coming, but you had a group that stuck it out. And to the superintendent's point, now it's a matter of the application. Can we operationalize this work? And to one of the speakers' point that, we also remove the SROs from the school district. And so I'm looking to see that we're going to have an even greater increase in the reduction, well, sort of saying a couple of things, that we would continue to see a reduction, I believe, in the suspension rates because of the restorative or collaborative work that we'll be doing with the staff and the students. And I think that, if we can demonstrate in the culture that we respect our students and parents, that's going to reduce the kind of conflict that we've been having in our district over the years. So if we can show that we love our students, we love our families, and that we're going to try to say yes to them at every point that we can, because we understand the kind of circumstances that some of our families come through, then I think that, we're going to have a powerful partnership between our families and students and the district. So I look forward to the stories, the testimonies that are going to come through, because I believe it's going to be an amazing partnership, a respectful partnership that we're going to have. And so I thank everybody for all of the work that has been done on this behalf. Long time coming, but we're here. Thank you, Commissioner Powell.
And thank you for those comments. Anyone else? Seeing no hands or microphones turned on, I don't think we need a motion to close out a public hearing. So I will just thank the community for attending, and have a blessed evening.